There is a path that climbs a mountain, and at this hour, the mist has come down over it, soft and grey and cool, so that you can see only the next few steps in front of you, and no farther than that. You do not have to climb it tonight. You can simply rest here at the foot of it, where the ground is soft beneath you, and the air is cool and a little damp against your skin. The grey light holds everything gently, the near stones, the wet grass, the shape of the trees just before they dissolve. It asks nothing of you at all. Perhaps you came here tonight with a mind that has been working too hard for too long. A mind that has been trying to know how something will turn out, trying to see the whole path before taking a single step, turning the same worry over and over in the dark, looking for the one answer that would finally let it rest. If that is you, you are welcome here exactly as you are. If you feel like it, you might leave a single word below, the name of the one thing you have been trying so hard to know. You do not have to understand it tonight. You only have to set it down for a while. I will tell you something plainly. I do not know how most things in my own life will turn out either. I am writing these words late, with cold tea beside me and rain on the window, and I still catch myself reaching for answers that have not arrived. So I am not speaking to you from above the mist. I am standing down in it, with you. Tonight, we will move slowly through 11 turnings of the heart, some carrying a single story and some carrying two. They come from the old Chan teachers of China, from the quiet halls of Japanese Zen, and from ordinary lives whose names were never written down. A weaver, a midwife, someone walking home in the fog. None of them needed to know everything, and neither, tonight, do you. These stories are contemplative in nature and are not a substitute for medical or therapeutic care. So let your body grow heavy wherever it rests. Let your shoulders come down from wherever they have been holding all day. There is nothing here you need to figure out, nothing to decide, nothing to solve. You can let your eyes close whenever they wish. The mist is not something to fear tonight. It is only the world, resting too, waiting quietly for the morning it cannot yet see. And as you rest here at the foot of the mountain, with the mist moving slowly over the path above, perhaps you can feel how much of your day is spent trying to see farther than the mist allows. How often the mind leans forward, straining to know what is coming, as if it could not rest until it had seen the whole road. Tonight there is no road to see. There is only this breath, and the next, and the soft grey air that holds them both. Let us begin where many quiet nights begin, beside the water, with someone who spent her whole life trying to know. You know the feeling of needing to be certain. It comes most often in the dark. You lie in bed and your mind returns to the one thing that has not yet been decided. Whether the results will be good, whether the person will call, whether the choice you made was the right one, or whether you will spend years wishing you had chosen otherwise. And you turn it over. You look at it from one side, then the other. You build the outcome in your mind. First, the good one, then the bad one, then the good one again, as if by rehearsing every possibility, you could somehow arrive early at the answer and be spared the waiting. But the answer does not come any faster. The night only grows longer, and somewhere underneath the worry there is a quieter, older ache, the feeling that you should already know, that a wiser or stronger person would have figured this out by now, that not knowing is a kind of failing on your part. So you keep working at it, long after the working has stopped helping, because setting it down feels like giving up. It is a tiring way to spend a night. It is a tiring way to spend a life. The old teachers noticed something about this kind of suffering. They saw that the pain of not knowing rarely comes from the unknown itself. It comes from the mind's demand to master the unknown before it will allow the body to rest. The unknown is only the open air ahead of us. It is the grasping after it that tightens the chest and keeps the eyes open in the dark. Long ago, in a fishing village on the calm inland sea of Japan, there was an old woman who had built her entire life on knowing, and who learned, on one ordinary grey morning, what her knowing had really been. Far out, the inland sea lay flat and pale as beaten silver, ringed by low green islands that rose and faded in the morning haze. Closer in, the small wooden boats knocked softly against the stone jetty, their ropes creaking, the smell of salt and wet rope and pine smoke drifting up from the village behind. And closest of all, on the cold stone step at the top of the path, sat an old woman named Kyo, her hands wrapped around a bowl of barley tea, gone lukewarm. Her eyes turned up toward a sky she had read every dawn for 40 years. The people of the village called her the Sky Reader, though she had never chosen the name. Since she was a girl, she had watched the way the clouds banded and thinned, the way the gulls fed close to shore or far out, the color the eastern light took just before the sun. She knew that a ring around the moon meant a change was coming, and that a certain heaviness in the southern air meant the wind would turn by afternoon. Each dawn the fishermen would climb the path and stand before her and ask the same question their fathers had asked her, and their grandfathers before them. Will the water hold today? And each dawn, for 40 years, Kyo had looked at the sky and told them. But this morning, when she lifted her eyes, the sky would not speak. It was not that the signs were bad. It was that they contradicted one another. The light in the east was clear and kind, the good light of a settled day. Yet, far to the south, a thin grey haze was rising that she did not like, and the gulls were doing something she had never quite seen, lifting and settling, as if they too could not decide. She sat very still and looked, and for the first time in 40 years, she felt the thing she had spent her whole life keeping at bay. She did not know, and she understood, in that moment, how much she had come to need the knowing. It was not the fisherman who would suffer most if she was wrong. It was her. For 40 years her worth had been the sky. She was the one who knew. It was why they climbed the path. It was why, when her husband died and her children moved to the city, the village had still kept a place for her, still brought her the first fish of the catch and the first rice of the harvest. Take away the knowing, and she was only an old woman on a cold step, with tea going cold in her hands. So she sat there as the light grew, and she was afraid, and the footsteps were already coming up the path. It was young Taro who reached her first, a fisherman barely past 20, his boat the smallest in the fleet, his new wife expecting their first child before the winter. He crouched before her the way the young always did, respectful, certain she held the answer. "Grandmother," he said, "what does the sky say this morning? Will the water hold?" Kyo looked at him for a long moment. Then she said the words she had never once said in 40 years. "I do not know, Taro. This morning I cannot read it. The sky is telling me two things at once, and I do not know which is true." The young man's face went still with something close to fear. Behind him, the other fishermen had gathered, and a silence spread among them, and Kyo felt her old heart sink, certain she had just watched her whole life fall away from her on a single grey morning. Then old Ren spoke. He was the eldest of the fishermen, older even than Kyo, his hands ruined and beautiful from 60 years of nets. "Then we will watch the water ourselves today," he said. "The way you taught us, that is enough. But you came to me to be told, Kiyosad. You have always come to be told." Ren smiled, and there were very few teeth in it. "We came to be seen," he said. "The telling was only the reason we gave. An old woman waiting at the top of the path, watching the sky for us before we were even awake. That is what we climbed for. Not the answer, the watching." And as he spoke, the fog she had feared came in over the water. It came the way it always came on that sea, without hurry, softening the far islands first, then the near ones, then the farthest boats, until even the closest hull was only a grey shape, and then only a sound, a knock of wood on stone somewhere in the whiteness. And Kyo, watching it come, felt something in her chest that she had not expected. Not fear, something loosening, because she saw, all at once, that she had never truly been able to see the whole day either. Even on her surest mornings, she had only ever read the next few hours, the nearest signs, the closest weather. The sky had never once told her the truth. It had only ever shown her its changing face, and she had spent a lifetime mistaking a face for a promise. Only the next wave was ever visible to anyone, and it had always, somehow, been enough. That morning Kyo did not pronounce. She rose from her cold step, and she walked down the path with the fishermen to the water's edge, something she had not done in years. She stood among them in the fog and watched the sea with them, and when the haze in the south thickened, she said so, and when it thinned, she said that too, not as one who knew, but as one who was looking, alongside them, at a thing none of them could fully see. The boats went out late and came back early and heavy with fish, and no one drowned. And the day was neither the good day nor the bad day, but simply the day, lived 1 hour at a time. And Kyo, walking home in the last of the fog, found herself wondering something she had never thought to wonder in 40 years of answers. She wondered why she had ever believed that to be useful. She first had to be certain. And she wondered how many other people lay awake at night, as she had, believing the same quiet, the exhausting thing. Let us stay with her a moment longer, here in the fog, before we move on. What was Kyo really holding? All those years on the cold steppe. It was not the sky. It was a belief about herself, that she was worth the place they kept for her only as long as she had the answer. The knowing had become the price of her belonging. And so every morning she paid it, and every morning it cost a little more, until the day the sky finally asked her to stop paying. This is the quiet mechanism the old teachers pointed to. It is not the not knowing that wears us down. It is the second thing we lay on top of it, the belief that we must know in order to be safe, in order to be worthy, in order to be allowed to rest. We take the open air of an uncertain future and we build a wall of demand across it. And then we exhaust ourselves, throwing our whole weight against the wall we ourselves made. You may know this from your own nights. The message you are waiting for, And how many times you have lifted the phone to check for a reply that has not come. The conversation tomorrow that you have already had, silently, 40 times in the dark, trying to know how it will go. The way you say to yourself, quietly, that you should have this figured out by now. You came to be seen. Somewhere along the way, you decided you had to be certain instead. But you do not. You were never the one who had to hold the whole sky. You only ever had to see the nearest wave, and even that you did not have to see alone. Rest is not the reward for finally knowing. Rest is allowed now. Let that be enough tonight. You do not have to read the whole sky. You do not have to read the whole sky. You never did. So let the sky be the sky tonight. Let it do what it does, whether you watch it or not. Feel the weight of your hands where they rest. Let them be heavy. There is nothing they need to hold right now. No phone to lift. No answer to reach for. Let the fingers soften and open. The way old Ren's hands opened after 60 years of nets, curved and easy and done with their gripping for the day. Your breath is moving on its own, in and out, the way the tide moves on that inland sea without anyone deciding it. You do not have to manage it. You do not have to know where the next breath will take you. It will simply arrive, and you will simply receive it, one wave at a time. If your mind reaches forward again, looking for the whole road, that is all right. Minds do that. You can notice it reaching, and you can let it come back, gently, to the only place it was ever able to rest. Here, this breath, this weight, this soft grey quiet. The fog is still on the water. The boats are still out there somewhere, knocking against the stone, and you do not need to see them to know that the night is holding you, exactly as the village held one old woman who finally admitted she could not read the sky. Rest here a while. There is another small light farther along the path, another person who could not stop asking the world to explain itself. We will go to them slowly, when you are ready. In no hurry at all. The fog stays on the water a while longer, and the boats come and go inside it, and no one now is waiting at the top of the path to be told what the day will bring. Perhaps you can feel how quiet it becomes, when no one is demanding an answer of the sky, and yet the mind, even a resting mind, has another old habit, a close cousin to the first. It is not only the future it wants to master. It wants a reason for everything. It wants to know why. Let us follow the path a little higher now, up into the mountains of southern China, to a monastery where a young monk was slowly wearing himself thin on that single small word. You know this habit too. Something happens that hurts you, and before the hurt has even settled, you are already asking why. Why did they say that? Why did they leave? Why does it always seem to happen to you, and not to the people who seem to deserve it more? You lie in the dark and you build reasons, and each reason opens onto another question, and each question onto another, until you are far out in a country of your own making with no clear way back to sleep. Or it is smaller than that. A single word someone used, a look you could not quite read, a message that went unanswered, and you turn it over in your hands trying to know what it meant, certain that if you could only understand it, the ache of it would finally let you go. But the understanding does not come, or it comes and does not help, and still you keep asking, because the asking at least feels like doing something, and stopping feels like defeat. You have been told your whole life that to understand a thing is to be free of it. So you reach and you reach for the understanding, and the freedom does not arrive, and you cannot see why. There is a particular tiredness that only this brings. The tiredness of a mind that will not allow itself to simply not know. The old teachers saw this clearly, and what they said about it can sound almost unkind at first, until you feel the mercy underneath it. They said that understanding and peace are not the same thing. A reason can be perfectly true and still not set you free. The mind that insists on a reason before it will rest has set itself a task with no end. Because reasons breed reasons, and the last why is never reached. There was a master in the mountains of Tang Dynasty, China, more than 1,000 years ago, who had a certain way of meeting this hunger in his students. His name was Guishan, and he lived on the mountain that would later take his name. And he was known for something strange. He would not answer the questions his students most wanted answered. High on the mountain, the pines went up in dark ranks into the low cloud, and the wind moved through them with a sound like a slow sea. Below the pines, the tiled roofs of the monastery held the last of the light, still wet from an afternoon rain, the smell of pine resin and cold stone and wood smoke hanging in the air. And in the doorway of the meditation hall, wringing his cold hands, stood a young monk named Ming, who had climbed to this mountain 3 years before, carrying 100 questions, and who had since only added to their number. Ming was clever, and that was his trouble. He had read more sutras than monks twice his age. He could recite the lines on emptiness, on impermanence, on the nature of mind, and he could argue their meanings late into the night with anyone who would sit with him. But the more he understood, the less peace he had, and he could not understand that either. Each answer he won only showed him 3 new questions standing behind it, and lately he had begun to lie awake. His mind, turning like a mill wheel with no grain to grind, asking why, until the word wore smooth and lost its shape. He had come this evening to ask the master to explain the one thing that he was sure would finally make all the others fall into place. He was certain such a thing existed. He believed he only had to find the right question, and the right answer would follow. And then, at last, he would be able to rest. The question, in the end, was about whether the mind was Buddha or whether it was not, since the old texts seemed to him to say both, and the contradiction had been keeping him from sleep for a month. Guishan was old by then, and he sat by a low fire with his eyes half closed, and he let the young monk pour out the whole of it, the texts and the contradictions and the sleepless nights. When Ming had finally finished, the master was quiet for a long while. Then he spoke. "I will not answer that," Guishan said. "You already have 100 answers to it, and not one of them has let you sleep. So let me ask you something instead, and I forbid you to answer it from any book you have ever read. Before your mother and father were born, before you had a name, before you had a face, what were you then? Show me that." Ming opened his mouth. He began with a line from a sutra. Guishan shook his head. He tried another, a commentary he had memorized whole, and the master shook his head again. He tried his own careful reasoning, clever and quick, and the old man only watched him, patient as the mountain itself, and said nothing at all. And Ming felt the ground he had stood on his whole life begin to tilt beneath him. Everything he reached for was borrowed. Every answer belonged to someone else. Not one of them was his own. "I do not know," he said at last, and his voice broke on the words, because to him they were a confession of failure, the worst thing he could imagine having to say aloud. "There," said Guishan, very softly. "That is the first true thing you have said since you came to this mountain. The question you cannot answer is the first honest thing you have held all year. Do not run from it now." "But if I cannot answer it," Ming said, "then what am I to do? How am I to live? Not knowing." "You live beside it," the old man said. "You let it walk with you like a friend who does not need to speak. A borrowed answer is a coat that never warms the one who wears it. But this not knowing, this is yours. It is closer to you than your own breath. Stay near it. Do not chase it off with cleverness. And one day it will show you what no answer ever could." Ming did not awaken that night. That is not the way it happened for him. He went back to his cold cell and he lay awake. But for the first time, the lying awake was of a different kind. He was not chasing anything. He was simply lying in the dark beside a question that had no flaw. And to his great surprise, the dark did not swallow him. It held him. In the days that followed, the master sent him to carry water, to sweep the long stone paths, to do the plain and wordless work of the mountain, and he forbade him his books entirely. And one grey morning, walking the high trail with an empty bucket swinging from his hand, Ming stopped at the place where the path went up into the mist. He could see the next few stones, wet and dark and clear, and then nothing beyond them. Only the soft white where the trail went on, without his eyes being able to follow. Once, that very sight would have filled him with the old panic, the need to know where it led and what waited at the top. Now he only stood and looked. The path went up into the not knowing, and he found, standing there, that he could walk it anyway, one wet stone at a time, without ever once seeing the summit. Ming stayed on the mountain for many years, and in time he became a teacher himself, though he never did become the kind who had all the answers. When students came to him burning with their own whys, he did not feed the fire. He would ask them, gently, some question they could not answer, and then he would sit with them inside the not knowing until they stopped struggling against it. He remembered too well what it had cost him, all those sleepless years, believing that a reason was a door and that understanding was the only key. He had spent so long trying to become free of his questions. It had never once occurred to him, in all that time, that he might become free within them instead. And yet there are those who do get their answer, who chase the reason all the way to the end and finally close their hand around it, and who find, to their bewilderment, that it does not feed them either. That is a stranger sorrow, and quieter, and we will sit with it next, a little higher up the path, where the mist begins to grow thicker. Let us stay a moment longer with the young monk in his cold cell, lying awake in this new and gentler way. What had really been keeping Ming from his sleep all those years? It was never the doctrine. It was the belief that lived underneath the doctrine, the belief that he was not allowed to rest until he understood. He had made understanding into a gate he had to pass through before he would give himself permission to be at peace. And because the gate kept receding as he approached it, he never passed through, and so he never once let himself rest at all. Guishan did not hand him a better answer. He did something kinder and much harder. He quietly took the gate away. You may feel the shape of your own gate tonight. The thing you have told yourself, you must understand before you are allowed to set it down. Why they hurt you. Why it happened the way that it did. why you are the way you are. You have stood at that gate for a long time, waiting to be let through into some peace you were sure lived on the far side of understanding. But the peace was never on the far side. The gate was never real. You can put down the why. You can put down the why. Not because you have finally answered it, but because you were never truly required to answer it in order to rest. Understanding is a good thing, and it comes in its own time, often on the very day you stop chasing it. But it is not a toll you must pay before you are allowed to close your eyes. The question can stay open tonight. It can lie down beside you like an old dog by the fire and sleep. And you can sleep too, with the why still unanswered, still unfinished, and be entirely safe. So let the question rest tonight, exactly as it is, and let your body rest around it. Feel the back of your head where it meets the pillow. Let its whole weight be given over, given down into what holds you. There is nothing your mind must solve before it is allowed to grow quiet. The why can wait. It has waited this long already. It can wait until morning, or far longer, and you will still be held exactly as you are being held right now. Notice how the breath goes on without your understanding it. You do not know how the next breath is made, and still it comes. You do not know by what hidden path sleep finds you each night, and still, night after night, it comes. The body has always known how to do the very things the mind cannot explain. You can trust it now. You can let the clever part of you, the part that reaches and reasons and asks, grow soft and slow and finally still. The mist is on the high path. The next stone is wet and dark and clear beneath your foot, and beyond it, the way goes up into the soft white, and you do not have to see where it leads. You only have to rest here, at the foot of it, breathing, held, and farther along, a little higher. Someone who at last found their answer is beginning to discover that it did not bring them what they had been promised. We will go to them gently, in a while, when you are ready, and there is no hurry in it at all. Ming grew old on his mountain, free at last, inside the questions he never solved, and the mist kept its secrets. And that was well, but perhaps a doubt is stirring in you now, the same one that stirs in almost everyone who hears such a thing. It is easy to say, let the question go, but what if the question matters? What if there really is an answer, and it really would help, if only you could reach it? Tonight, we will look straight at that hope, from two sides at once. First, high on another mountain, at a monk who gave everything he had to answering. And then, down in a river town, at a mother who finally received the very answer she had begged the world for across 10 long years. You have imagined it. Surely, the moment you finally know, the results come back and they are clear, and the fear lifts all at once. The person finally tells you the truth of how they feel, and the not knowing that has haunted your nights simply ends. You have rehearsed that moment of relief so many times that it has quietly become a kind of promise you have made to yourself, that on the far side of knowing, peace is waiting for you. And so you chase the answer. You refresh the screen. You ask the question one more time, in one more way. You lie awake constructing the conversation in which everything is at last made clear, because you believe, with your whole tired heart, that the knowing is the thing that will finally set you free. It is one of the most reasonable beliefs a person can hold. It is also, far more often than we expect, quietly untrue. The answer arrives, and the peace we were promised does not arrive with it, and we are left holding the very thing we were certain would save us, wondering why our chest is still so tight. The old teachers had a plain way of putting this. They said that knowing a thing and being free of it are two different rivers, and that we spend our lives sitting on the bank of the first, waiting for a boat that only ever leaves from the second. There was a master in Tang Dynasty China named Xiang Yan, another of Guishan's own students, who had once been the most bookish monk on his mountain, until a question he could not answer broke his cleverness open like a nut. When he became a teacher himself, he gave his monks a single image to sit with, and it has been carried down now for more than 1,000 years. Evening on Xiangyan's mountain came down blue and slow, the great bronze bell sounding once across the valley, the smell of cold incense and old cedar filling the hall where the monks sat in long rows on the worn wooden floor. Xiangyan sat before them, an old man now, his face folded and kind, and into the quiet he set the image that would trouble his best student for the whole of that winter. "Imagine a man," he said, "high in a tree, hanging from a branch by his teeth. His hands can reach nothing. His feet touch nothing. And a traveler stops beneath the tree and calls up to him, 'Why did Bodhidharma come from the West? What is the meaning of all of it?' Now, if the man does not answer, he has failed the one who asked him. But if he opens his mouth to answer, he falls. So, what does he do?" The monk sat with it in silence, and one young monk named Wei felt the question sink into him like a hook, and could not, afterward, get it back out again. All that winter Wei worked at it. He was earnest, and proud in the way the earnest so often are, and he simply could not bear a question he was unable to answer. He brought the master answer after answer. He said the man should stay silent and accept his failure with dignity. Xiangyan shook his head. He said the man should answer and accept the fall, since truth was worth a life. Xiangyan shook his head. He said perhaps the tree was not real. Perhaps the whole scene was a dream, and the man could simply wake. The master only looked at him with something close to tenderness, and said nothing at all. Wei grew thin. He stopped sitting with the others at meals. His eyes went dark from lack of sleep, and still the branch and the teeth and the traveler turned in his mind through every watch of the night. Near the very end of the winter he came to Xiangyan hollow and defeated, and for the first time he did not bring an answer. He brought instead a small question of his own. "Master," he said, "I cannot solve it. I have given it everything I have. Tell me only this one thing. The man in the tree, what was he like before he climbed up there?" And Xiangyan laughed. It was a warm laugh, delighted, the laugh of a grandfather whose grandchild has finally said something wise by accident. "Now," he said, "now you are close. Before he climbed the tree, he was a man walking free on the good ground, troubled by nothing at all. He climbed up there himself. He set his own teeth on the branch, and only then did he begin to call his situation a trap." Wei stood very still in the cold hall. "You mean," he said slowly, "that there was never anyone forcing him to answer?" "There was never anyone in the tree at all," said Xiangyan, "until he climbed it. The question does not hold you. Wei, your need to answer it holds you. Those are not the same thing, though they feel the same from up in the branches. Set the need down. and you will find you have been standing on the ground the entire time. Wei walked out of the hall into the cold blue evening, and the mist had come down over the mountain, soft and grey, hiding the far peaks, hiding the path more than a few steps ahead of him. And for the first time in the whole long winter, he did not mind at all that he could not see. He had spent the entire season hanging in a tree of his own making, his jaw aching around a branch he had bitten down on himself, certain that his very life depended on producing an answer, and all he had ever needed to do was open his mouth and let the branch go, and discover that the good ground had been resting an inch beneath his feet the whole time. The answer he had chased so hard was never the thing that could free him. Letting go of the need for it was, stay with Wei a moment. Out there, in the mist, his jaw finally unclenched. What had trapped him was never the question. It was the branch he had bitten down on, the belief that he must answer or fail. He built the tree. He climbed it himself. He called it a trap. And then he suffered inside it all winter long, as certain the suffering was coming at him from somewhere outside. You may know this tree. The problem you have decided you must solve before you are allowed to rest. The answer you have bitten down on, certain that your whole peace hangs there on your teeth. But look gently at who put you up there. Look at whose need it truly is. The question is only a question. It drifts below the tree and calls up to you, and it cannot make you fall, and it cannot make you climb. Only the need to answer can do that, and the need is yours. Only the need holds you, which means, tonight, it can also be set down. You can open your mouth. You can let the branch go. The ground is closer than you think. That is one side of it. But you may still be thinking, that is all very well for a riddle in a monastery. My question is real. My question has an answer. And if I could only have it, then surely I would be at peace. So let us go down off the mountain now, to a river town where the boats came and went with the merchants, and to a woman who was granted exactly that. She was given her answer. Her name was Mai, and she wove cloth by the water. And for 10 years she had not once slept a whole night through. 10 years before, her only son, Jun, had quarreled with her over his wish to leave and trade along the river, and he had gone off in anger, and from that day he had never once sent word. And every night since, May had lain awake with the same 3 questions turning slowly in her. Did he blame her? Was he ashamed of her? Was he even still alive? She wove all day, the shuttle going back and forth, and she built 100 reasons for his silence. And each reason she built was a small knife she then held to her own heart. If only she could know why, she told herself, through all those years. Then, finally, she could rest. Then, on an ordinary grey morning, with the river mist still on the water, a man off a merchant boat knocked at her door, and standing behind him, older, weathered brown by the sun, entirely alive, was her son. That night, when the first shock and the weeping had passed, and they sat together by the small lamp, she asked him the question she had carried for 10 years. Why? She said. 10 years. Chun. 10 years I lay awake in the dark asking why you never wrote to me. Tell me. I have to know why. He looked down at his rough hands for a long moment. At first I was ashamed, he said quietly. I had left in anger, and things went badly for me. and I could not bear to write home and say so. Then so much time had gone by that any letter would have had to explain the silence itself, and I did not know how to do that. And then more time passed, and more. Mother, there is no good reason. There was never any great reason. I was only a fool, one small, ordinary day at a time. For 10 years. May sat very still with this. That is all, she said at last. That is the whole of it. That is the whole of it, he said, and he could not meet her eyes. And she understood, sitting there in the lamplight, that she had waited 10 years for a stone she could have picked up off any road. The answer was small. The answer was almost nothing at all. It did not undo a single one of those thousands of nights. And she saw, with a strange quiet clarity, that it had never been the not knowing that was the wound. It was the 10 years she had spent demanding to know, the shuttle going back and forth, the 100 small knives. And what finally loosened the old knot beneath her ribs was not the reason. The reason was dust. What loosened it was his rough, warm hand closing over hers. Here, now, in the lamplight, alive. 2 people, 1,000 years and 1,000 miles apart, and the same quiet discovery passing between them across all that distance. The monk gave a whole winter to answering, and found his freedom only on the day he finally stopped. The mother gave 10 years to a single question, and found, when the answer at last arrived, that it was not the answer she had needed at all. This is the thing the old teachers kept pointing toward, patiently, in 100 different ways. Knowing and peace are 2 different rivers. We suffer, they said, not so much from the first arrow, the thing that actually happens to us, as from the second arrow, the one we fire into ourselves, over and over, in the dark, demanding to understand. Wise tree, May's 10 years of nights. The answer, when it finally comes, is so often smaller than all the years we spent reaching for it. And the peace, when it comes, so often has nothing whatever to do with the answer. It comes instead from a warm hand in yours, from a single breath, from the plain, ordinary ground beneath your feet that was holding you the entire time you believed yourself lost up in the tree. So let the answer be small tonight, or let it be missing altogether. Neither one has the power to keep you from your rest. Feel your jaw. Notice whether it is holding, the way Wei's jaw held all winter around his branch. Let it unclench. Let the teeth part, just slightly, the tongue going soft behind them. There is nothing you must answer before morning. There is nothing you are required to solve in order to be allowed to sleep. Let the breath come and go on the good ground of your own body, in and out, unhurried, asking nothing of you. The question can drift below the tree and call up all it likes. You do not have to answer it tonight. You were never really in the tree at all. And if a small fear stirs in you even now, a fear that whispers, "But if I stop needing to know, I will lose my grip on everything. I will fall," then that fear is worth meeting gently, when you are ready. It is a deeper knot, and an older one, and we will sit with it next, to softly, and in no hurry at all. For now there is only this, the breath, the weight of you, held, the mist on the mountain, keeping its quiet secrets, and you, resting anyway, in the middle of everything you do not know. So we come now to the fear itself, the one that stirred in you as you lay listening a moment ago. If I stop needing to know, I will lose my grip. If I loosen my hold, I will fall. It is one of the oldest fears there is, and one of the most human, and it deserves to be met gently, not argued with, because underneath all the reaching to know, underneath the questions and the answers, there is a quiet belief we almost never say aloud. The belief that if we can only stay certain enough, prepared enough, in control enough, then we will be safe. Tonight we go to two places where that belief was tenderly undone. First, a birthing room in a mountain village on a long night of rain. And then, a cold monastery high in the hills, and a master who was asked, quite simply, how to escape the cold. You know this fear from the inside. It is the reason you lie awake making plans. If this happens, then I will do that. If that goes wrong, then I will have this ready. You run the branching paths of every possible tomorrow, trying to prepare for each one in turn, because somewhere long ago, you learned that to be caught unready is to be in danger. So you stay vigilant. You keep one hand always on the wheel, even in your sleep. You over-prepare for the meeting, the appointment, the difficult conversation, rehearsing every contingency until your shoulders have turned to stone. And there is a part of you that believes, quietly, that this vigilance is the only thing standing between you and disaster. That if you ever truly let go, if you ever stopped managing and monitoring and knowing, then everything you love would slip through your fingers and be lost. It is an exhausting way to live, with a fist always half closed around a life that will not hold still. But letting go feels so much like falling that you keep the fist clenched, night after night, and you call the deep aching in your hand the reasonable price of being safe. The old teachers were very gentle about this, and also very clear. They did not tell people to stop caring. They pointed instead at something we would all rather not look at directly, which is that the control we clutch so tightly was mostly never ours to hold in the first place. We did not arrange our own birth. We do not command the weather, or the hearts of the people we love, or the hour when we will die. The grip gives us the feeling of safety without ever giving us the fact of it. There was an old midwife, long ago, in a village high in the mountains of Japan, who understood this in her two hands more deeply than any scholar has ever understood it in words. The rain came down all that night on the steep thatched roofs of the village, and inside a small lamplit room, a young woman labored to bring her first child into the world. Two midwives knelt beside her on the woven mats. One was old, and her name was Aki, and she had caught more infants in her hands than she could possibly count across 40 years of nights. The other was young. Her name was Sana, and this was among the first truly hard nights of her life. And she was so frightened, she could scarcely breathe. The labor had gone on since dusk. The child was turned the wrong way and would not come, and Sana could feel her own heart hammering against her ribs as the long hours wore past. The room smelled of rain and tallow smoke, and the clean bitterness of the herbs steeping in a pot by the fire. She kept stealing glances at Aki's face, searching it for the one thing she needed most, some flicker of a sign that the old woman knew how this night would end. But Aki's face gave away nothing at all. She was simply there, her hands moving slow and sure, her breathing even and unhurried, murmuring to the laboring mother in a low, steady voice, like water running over smooth stones. And Sana could not understand it, How could the old woman be so calm when neither of them could possibly know whether this long dark night would end in joy or in grief? What was it that Aki knew that she herself did not? In a quiet moment, while the mother rested between the great waves of her labor, Sana leaned close to the old woman and whispered the question that had been tearing at her all night. "How can you be so calm?" she breathed. "You cannot know if the child will come, or how, or whether all will be well. How do you bear the not knowing?" Aki did not look up from her work. "I do not know if the child will come," she said softly. "I have never known, on any night, in all my 40 years, not once." Sana stared at her. "Then how are you not afraid?" "Because a long time ago I stopped trying to hold the whole night in my hands," the old woman said. "Now I only hold what is truly in my hands. This mother, this one breath of hers, this next small thing that I can actually do. The rest was never mine to carry, though I wore myself thin trying to carry it, all through my first 10 years. Look at your own hands, child." Sana looked down. Her hands were clenched into hard white fists in her lap, the knuckles pale in the lamplight. "A closed fist cannot feel anything," Aki said, very gently, "and it cannot help anyone at all. You cannot catch what is coming with a fist. Open them. Let them be soft and warm and ready. Then they will know what to do, long before your frightened mind has any idea." And Sana, hardly knowing why she obeyed, opened her hands. She let the tight fists loosen and fall open on her knees, palms turned up, empty, and something in her chest quietly loosened along with them. She had been trying, all night long, to see the whole shape of what was coming, to know the ending before it had arrived. Now she simply knelt there, in the small trembling circle of lamplight, in the very middle of everything she could not see, and let her open hands rest, empty and ready. And when at last the moment came, and Aki spoke a single low word, Sana's hands moved almost without her, gentle and certain in the warm dark, feeling their way to exactly what was needed of them. She was not seeing the night. She was feeling her way through it, one small sure touch at a time. And near dawn, as the rain eased at last on the roof, the child turned and came and cried out and was well. Stay a moment longer in that lamplit room, with Sana's open hands resting empty on her knees. What had frightened her so badly was never the birth itself. It was the not knowing and her certainty that she had to master it. That safety somehow lived in seeing the ending before it came. And what steadied the old woman kneeling beside her was not knowledge. Aki knew nothing that Sana did not know. She had simply, a long time ago, unclenched her fist. You have been holding your own fist a long time too, closed around the outcome you cannot control, around the person you cannot keep safe merely by worrying over them, around the tomorrow you keep trying to see in the dark. And you have believed, all this while, that the clench itself was the thing keeping you safe. But feel, honestly, tonight, what the clench has actually given you. Not safety, only an aching hand, and a night with no rest in it. You cannot catch what is coming with a fist. You never could. Open the hand. Let it be soft. Whatever comes, you will meet it. One small, sure touch at a time, and your open hands will know what to do. But there is a deeper root beneath this fear, and the old teachers went straight for it. High in the mountains of Tang Dynasty China, there lived a master named Dongshan, in a monastery where the winters came down hard and pitiless off the high peaks, and the summers lay heavy and still in the valley. One bitter winter, a monk who was suffering badly from the cold came before him and asked, quite simply, for a way out of it. "Master," the monk said, "when the cold and the heat come upon us, how are we to avoid them?" It was an honest question, and folded up inside, it was every human wish there has ever been. The wish to escape discomfort, to master our conditions, to find at last the safe and steady place where nothing hard can ever reach us again. Dongshan looked at him for a moment. "Why not go," he said, "to the place where there is neither cold nor heat?" The monk's whole face lit up. Here it was. The secret he had always suspected must exist. The safe country beyond all weather. "And where?" he asked eagerly, leaning in. "Is this place where there is neither cold nor heat?" And the old master gave him an answer he had not expected at all. "When it is cold," Dongshan said, "let the cold be cold all the way through you. Let it have you completely, until there is no one left standing apart from it, shivering and wishing to be somewhere else. When it is hot, let the heat have you in just the same way. That is the place you are looking for. It was never somewhere else. It is here, in the very middle of the cold. On the day you finally stop trying to stand outside of it." The monk was quiet for a long time. He had come asking for a way to escape his own life. The old man had shown him, without unkindness, that there was no escape anywhere, and that the escaping itself had been the whole of his suffering all along. There was no safe country over the next hill. There was no season without weather, no life without loss, no doorway a person could stand in to keep the wind off. He had spent his whole life bracing in a doorway that did not exist, against a wind that blew on both sides of it. And there was only this one life, and the strange deep peace of walking straight into the heart of it, instead of forever flinching back from its edge. Put the two of them side by side now, the young midwife and the shivering monk, and the same quiet truth stands plainly between them. Sana believed that safety meant seeing the ending before it came. The monk believed that safety meant reaching some place where nothing hard could touch him. Both of them were holding the very same fist, closed tight around the very same wish, that if they could only control enough, and know enough, and arrange enough, then at last they would be safe. But the old woman and the old master were pointing, each in their own way, at the same open secret. There is no such safety, and there never was. The child comes, or it does not, in its own time. The cold comes, and the heat, and the losses that no amount of vigilance can prevent. You cannot hold the whole night in your hands. What you can do is open them. And here is the thing that sounds impossible right up until the moment you have felt it, just once. In the dark, the open hand is not less safe than the fist. The open hand is the only thing that was ever safe at all. The clenched hand feels the seasons passing as an enemy at the gate. The open hand feels them passing as weather, and lets them pass, and is somehow held the whole time, exactly as you are being held right now. So let the fist open now, here, in the dark, where it is safe to try. Feel your hands wherever they are resting, and let them slowly uncurl. Let the fingers fall soft and open, the palms easy, holding nothing, needing to hold nothing at all. And feel your shoulders drawn up near your ears from a long day of bracing against the wind, and let them come down and down, away from the fear that has been living in them. There is nothing you must grip tonight. There is nothing in your whole life that stays safe only because you are lying awake and worrying over it. You can let go of the wheel. The night knows how to drive. Notice the breath coming in without your permission and leaving again without your effort. The small seasons of it passing through you, cool and then warm, and you not controlling a single one of them, and safe. This is the place with neither cold nor heat. It was never somewhere else. It is here, in the very middle of everything you cannot control. Breathing, held, your hands fallen open on the dark. And when you are ready, but only then, we will walk on a little, to someone who could not stop rehearsing every possible tomorrow, who lived each hard thing 100 times over before it had ever once come. We will go to her softly, in no hurry at all. The hands stay open a while, resting on the dark, and the fear of falling loosens its grip. And that is a great deal for one night. But the mind that has learned to grasp at certainty has one more move, subtler than the rest, and almost everyone alive knows it well. When it cannot control the future and cannot know the future, it does the next thing. It rehearses the future. It lives each hard thing in advance, over and over, in the dark, as though suffering a sorrow early might somehow make it hurt less when it comes. Tonight we go gently to two people who carried this exact weight. First, a young monk in Song Dynasty China, lying awake in the dread of a winter that had not yet arrived. And then, a young wife in a village far to the south, who each night traveled years into a future that did not exist, and came home each morning exhausted. You know this one most intimately of all. Perhaps it is past midnight, and your body is tired, but your mind has slipped out of the present and gone traveling. It goes to the conversation next week that has not happened, and it holds it, and it goes wrong, and you feel the sting of it as though it were real. It goes to the illness that has not come, the money that might run short, the ones you love growing old, growing ill, one day being gone, and you live it. You live the whole of it, right there in your bed. The grief arriving years before the loss, the fear arriving years before the danger, if the danger ever comes at all. You have died 100 small deaths in the dark for things that never once happened. It is as though some part of you believes that by suffering a thing in advance, you can buy it off, soften it, be ready. But the suffering you pay in advance is never subtracted from the suffering that comes. It is simply added to the peace you might have had tonight. You lie there paying and paying into an account that never once pays you back. The old teachers had a clear eye for this. They saw that we borrow tomorrow's grief and pay it tonight, at ruinous interest, and receive nothing at all in return. The future we rehearse so carefully is not even real. It is a mist of our own breath, and we mistake it for the road. There was a Chan master in Song Dynasty China named Wu Men, who gathered up the old stories of his tradition into a book that is still read 1,000 years later, and who had a plain and gentle way of bringing his frightened students back from the winters that had not yet come. Autumn had come to the monastery where Wu Men lived. High in the hills, the maples burning slowly red along the ridge, the mornings cool and clear, the smell of wood smoke and turning leaves drifting through the courtyards. It should have been a season of quiet beauty. But one young monk, whose name was Jing, could not feel a moment of it, because everyone in the valley was saying the coming winter would be a hard one, the hardest in years. And Jing had not slept a whole night in a week for dread of it. He saw it all when he closed his eyes. The snow piling against the doors, the rice stores running thin, the old monks falling sick in the cold, the young ones going hungry, the long grey months of suffering that were surely coming. He carried the winter with him through every waking hour of the autumn, and it grew heavier by the day. At last, hollow-eyed and desperate, he went to the old master to ask how a person could possibly prepare for a hardship so large and so certain. Woman was sitting on the wooden veranda in the late afternoon light, doing nothing at all, watching the maples. He listened to the whole of the young monk's dread, the snow, the empty stores, the sickness, all of it. And when Jing had finished, the old man was quiet for a moment. Then he asked a question that seemed to have nothing to do with anything. "What season is it now?" Jing, the young monk, blinked. "It is autumn, master. You know that it is autumn." "And how is the autumn?" Women asked. "Tell me how it is, today." Jing opened his mouth to return to the winter, and then stopped, because the master was clearly waiting for something else. He thought, "The leaves are turning," he said slowly. "The maples on the ridge have gone red. There was a cool breeze this morning, off the water. The persimmons are ripening by the gate." "Ah," said woman softly. "So all of that has been happening. The red leaves, the cool breeze, the ripening fruit. And where have you been? All this while it was happening." Jing was quiet. "You have spent the whole of this autumn living in a winter that has not come," the old master said, "without any unkindness at all. You have not once been here, in the season that is actually around you. Tell me this, when the winter finally comes, wherever will you go to meet it?" The young monk thought carefully. "I suppose," he said, "I will meet it when it comes." "Yes," said woman, "not before. There is nowhere else to meet it. You cannot live the winter early in order to soften it. Jing, you can only lose the autumn trying, and the autumn will not come again. This breeze, this red leaf falling now. Look, just there. This is the best of your life. If only you would come out of the winter and be in it." Jing turned and looked where the old man was pointing, and he saw a single red maple leaf let go of its branch and fall, turning slowly through the clear gold afternoon light, and land without a sound on the worn boards of the veranda. He had been so busy with the snow that had not fallen that he had not seen a single leaf of the autumn that was actually, quietly, falling all around him. Stay with Jing a moment. On the veranda, watching that one leaf come down through the gold light. He had done nothing wrong. Exactly. He was only trying to be ready, the way any careful person tries to be ready. But in trying to live the winter early, he had lost the one season he actually had. The suffering he rehearsed did not make the winter lighter. It only made the autumn empty. You have your own winter, waiting somewhere out in the dark of your mind. The thing you are dreading, the loss you are rehearsing, the conversation, the diagnosis, the year that might go wrong. And you have been living there, out ahead of your own life, so faithfully that you have hardly been here at all. But look, gently, Where are you actually? You are here, in the warm dark, breathing, the day behind you and the winter not yet come. This breath is the season you are truly in. This weight of your body on the bed, this quiet. You cannot live tomorrow early to make it hurt less. You can only miss tonight trying. So let the winter keep for now. It will come when it comes, and not one moment before, and you will meet it then, with a strength you cannot feel in advance, because it does not exist yet. For now, there is only this good autumn evening of your rest. Now, a teaching seen is a fine thing, but a teaching lived, night after night, is another. So let us go and see what this actually looks like, in an ordinary life, in an ordinary house, far to the south, in a village in old Vietnam, among the rice fields. There was a young woman named Lan, newly married into her husband's family, and she had the same trouble as the monk Jing, though no one had ever given it a name. Every single night, she went traveling into the dark of the years ahead. She would lie beside her sleeping husband on the woven mat, the rain falling soft on the banana leaves outside, and her mind would slip its rope and run. What if the harvest failed? What if her husband grew tired of her? What if there were no children, or too many, or one fell ill? She saw the poverty, the sorrow, the funerals, all of it, unrolling year after year in the dark, and she lived each one, and wept quietly at things that had not happened, and mostly never would. By morning she was hollow, and could not have said why. It was her husband's grandmother, old Hoa, nearly blind now, who slept in the next room, and heard the girl turning and sighing through the small hours, night after night. One evening the old woman came and sat on the edge of the mat in the dark. "Child," she said, "you are far away again. Where have you gone tonight?" Lan was ashamed, but the old woman's voice was kind, and it came out of her in a rush. "To next year," she whispered. "To the year after. I was seeing all the ways it could go wrong. I cannot stop seeing them." "And is any of it here yet?" the old woman asked. "Any of it? In this room? Tonight?" "No," Lan admitted. "But it could come. Any of it could come." "It could," said Hoa, and she did not pretend otherwise. "Some of it will. Most of it never will. I am very old, child, and I can tell you that almost all the winters I lay awake dreading never came, and the few real sorrows that did come arrived from directions I had never once thought to watch. So the watching bought me nothing. It only cost me the nights." She reached out and found Lan's hand in the dark. "When your mind runs off to those far years again, do not fight it. Only call it home with your body. Tell me 3 things you can feel right now in this room." Lan lay still and tried. "The quilt is warm," she said. "I can smell the rain on the earth outside. I can hear him breathing beside me." "There," the old woman said. "That is where your whole life is. The warm quilt, the smell of the rain, his breath in the dark, not in the far years. Here, come back to these, child, as many times as you need to. 1,000 times a night, if you must. This little room is the only place you were ever able to live." And so it became a practice for her, night after night. Her mind would run off to borrow tomorrow's grief, and Lan would quietly call it home. The quilt, The rain, his breath. She did not win every night, but slowly the far years loosened their hold, and more often she found herself simply here, in the small warm room, in the only life she actually had. Put them side by side now, the young monk and the young wife, an ocean and a way of life apart, both of them worn thin by the same invisible labor. Jing lived all autumn in a winter that had not come. Lan lived all her nights in years that did not exist, and each of them was gently turned around and brought home the same way, not by being promised that nothing bad would ever happen, for no one can promise that, but by being shown the door back into the present and taught to walk through it again and again. This is one of the oldest mercies the teachers ever offered. The mind suffers in 3 rooms. They said, the past, the future, and the present. But only one of the 3 rooms is real. You cannot be harmed by a winter that has not come. You can only be robbed of the autumn you are standing in. And the way home is always the same. Always this near. Always through the body and the breath. This weight, this warmth, this breath. Come back to these, they said, as many times as it takes, and you will find you were home the whole time, in the only season there is. So let your mind come home now, out of the far years, into this one quiet room. Feel the whole length of your body resting, the heaviness in your legs, the slow rise and fall of your chest. If the mind has wandered off to some winter, that is all right. Gently, without any scolding, call it home. 3 things, right here. The weight of the blanket over you, the temperature of the air on your face, the soft sound of your own breathing in the dark. That is where your life is tonight. Not in next year. Not in the sorrow that has not come. Here, there is no winter in this room. There is only the good autumn of your rest. The leaf falling slowly through the gold light. The rain on the leaves. The breath going in and out on its own. You do not have to live tomorrow tonight. You never did. And when you are ready, we will come at last to the heart of it, higher up the misty path than we have yet been, to 2 travelers meeting in a snowstorm, and to the strange and beautiful thing one of them said about not knowing. We will go to them softly, in a little while, in no hurry at all. Lan slept at last that night, the rain still falling soft on the banana leaves, her hand still loosely curled where the old woman's fingers had let it go. And now the path climbs higher still, into thinner air, into a colder and older story, the one this whole night has been quietly walking toward. We go now to a snowstorm in China, more than 1,000 years ago, and to a young monk who was about to be given the truest gift a teacher can give a student. Not an answer, something better than an answer. By now you may be feeling something new settling in you, something quieter than relief. Perhaps, across this night, you have noticed how many times the going in search of an answer led somewhere hollow, and how many times the simple admission that you did not know led, strangely, somewhere warmer. You may be starting to sense that this is not merely a trick for getting through hard nights. It may be something closer to the truth of things, that the tightly held knowing you have spent your whole life gathering, defending, updating, protecting, was never quite as close to you as the soft, open, not knowing you keep trying to escape. Let us go all the way into that now, gently, with no more turning away. The old teachers had a single sentence for this, so short it can be carried in one breath, and so deep that entire lifetimes of practice have been built around it. They said, simply, that not knowing is the most intimate thing there is. It sounds, at first, like a riddle, even a small unkindness, since we spend our whole lives believing the opposite. That intimacy comes from knowing someone completely, from having every question finally answered. But there was a young monk in Tang Dynasty, China, a scholar named Fayan, gifted and well-trained and full of learning, who was given this single sentence on an ordinary snowy afternoon, and it changed the whole shape of his life. Fayan had left his home monastery some time before, as many young monks did, to walk from teacher to teacher across the country, deepening his practice, testing what he knew against what others could show him. He traveled with several companions, and they had been on the road many weeks when the sky over the mountains turned the color of iron, and the first flakes began to fall, thin and stinging, carried sideways on a wind that had teeth in it. By the time they reached a small monastery at the edge of the hills, the snow had thickened into a true storm, and the world beyond the gate had gone entirely white, the near pines only grey shapes and the far pines gone altogether, swallowed into the same soft nothing that had settled over the whole mountain. The monks of that place took the travellers in without a word of complaint, brought them in from the cold, gave them a fire and hot tea and a warm corner to wait out the weather, and it became clear within a day that they would be staying rather longer than they had planned. The abbot of that small monastery was an old monk named Dizang, quiet and unremarkable to look at, with none of the fame that clung to the great teachers whose names Fayan had been chasing across the country. He did not lecture the travellers, did not gather them for formal teaching, simply let them warm themselves and wait for the sky to clear. But on the second evening, as the fire burned low and the wind moaned steadily against the shuttered windows, the old man settled himself near Fayan and looked at him for a while with an expression the young monk could not quite read. "Where are you going?" Once the snow lets up, Dizang asked. "Onward," Fayan said. "I am walking from teacher to teacher, deepening my practice. I go wherever the road takes me next." "And what is the purpose of it?" the old man asked. "All this walking, what are you hoping to find at the end of the road?" Fayan had answered this question many times before, to many people, and he had a whole store of fine phrases ready, about seeking the truth, about testing his understanding, about the great matter of life and death that every serious student must resolve. He opened his mouth to give one of them now, and then, for some reason, he could not have explained even to himself, none of the fine phrases came. He looked into the old man's plain, unhurried face, and he found, quite suddenly, that he did not actually know why he was walking. He had been walking so long and so hard that he had never once stopped to ask himself the question honestly. "I do not know," Fayan said. It came out of him quietly, almost like an apology, and he braced himself, the way any earnest student would, for the old man's disappointment, or his correction, or his gentle instruction on what the true purpose of the road ought to be. Dizang looked at him for a long moment, and something in his old face softened into something that was almost like delight. "Not knowing," he said, "is most intimate." Fayan sat very still. Outside, the wind pressed against the shutters, and the fire cracked once, low and orange, and for a moment nothing else in the room moved at all. He did not understand it. Not fully. Not that night. He turned the 4 small words over and over as the storm kept them there for days more, unable to travel on, and something about them would not let him go. He had spent years gathering knowledge the way a man gathers wood against a hard winter, believing each fact and each fine phrase brought him a little closer to the truth, a little safer, a little more himself. And yet here was this quiet, unfamous old man telling him, gently, that the moment he had come closest to something real all week was the moment he had nothing at all to offer. Not the moment of his cleverest answer, the moment of his plainest confession. He thought of every time he had reached for the right words instead of simply being present with someone. Every time he had explained himself to keep from truly being seen. Every time he had hidden his own honest confusion behind a phrase that sounded wise, because a phrase that sounded wise felt safer than the naked truth of not being sure. And he began to understand, slowly, sitting by that small fire while the snow buried the mountain outside, that all his careful knowing had been, in its own way, a kind of distance, a polished surface held up between himself and the world, and between himself and other people, and even between himself and his own heart. Knowing had kept him safe, but knowing had also kept him separate. It was only in the bare moment of I do not know, with no polish left on him at all, that Dzung had truly met him, and that he, for the first time on the whole long road, had truly met himself. The storm passed. Eventually, as storms do, the snow stopped. The sky cleared to a hard, bright blue, and the mountain paths opened again, wet and shining under the sun. Fayan's companions made ready to travel on, eager to reach the next famous teacher on their long list. But Fayan found, when the morning came, that he did not want to leave. Something in that small, humble monastery, with its unfamous old abbot who asked plain questions and gave no polished answers, had reached him more deeply in 3 days than 100 great teachers had reached him in years of walking. He stayed. He gave up the road, and the list of famous names, and the whole ambition of gathering enough knowledge to finally arrive somewhere safe. He sat instead with Dzung, day after day, in the plain, unglamorous work of the monastery, and he let himself not know, again and again, on purpose. The way another man might practice a scale on an instrument until it finally became music. It was there, some time later, sitting quietly with no particular expectation in his mind at all, that something in Fayan finally opened all the way a door that has been pushed against for years will sometimes swing open on its own the moment the pushing simply stops. He became, in time, one of the great teachers of his own age, the founder of a whole lineage of practice that is still carried forward today. And when his own students came to him afterward, burning with their 100 questions, certain that the answers were the thing that would finally save them, he would often only smile and ask them some plain, unglamorous question of his own, and wait, patient as falling snow, for the moment when they too would finally say, without any shame left in it at all, I do not know. Let us stay here a while longer, in the small warm room, with the fire burning low and the snow outside finally settling into silence. What actually happened between Fayan and the old man was not an exchange of information. Nothing was explained. Nothing was resolved. And yet something real passed between them, more real than any of the fine answers Fayan had been carrying from teacher to teacher across the whole width of the country. It passed between them in the bare, unguarded moment when a clever man laid his cleverness down and said, simply, "I do not know." This is the quiet heart of the whole night we have spent together. We have been treating not knowing as a wound to be healed, a gap to be closed, a discomfort to be managed until sleep finally arrives despite it. But the old teachers were pointing at something else entirely. They were saying that the not knowing itself met without shame, without the old armor of having to appear certain, is not a lesser state we must pass through on our way to something better. It is, in itself, the closest thing to being simply and nakedly alive that a person ever gets to feel. Every "I do not know" you have ever spoken honestly, without pretending otherwise, has been a small doorway into exactly this kind of intimacy, with yourself, and with whoever was standing near enough to hear it. You may have spent this whole night, and many nights before it, believing that your worth, your safety, your very right to rest, depended on how much you could claim to understand. But think, now, gently, of the truest moments you have shared with another person. Were they built from your cleverest explanations, or were they built from the moments you set the explaining down, and simply admitted, "I do not know how this will turn out, and I am here anyway"? That admission was never a failure. It was the doorway. So let the not knowing be close to you now, the way it was close to Fian, by the small fire, while the snow fell outside and asked nothing of him at all. Feel your whole body resting here, not needing to explain itself to anyone. Feel the quiet honesty of simply being here, uncertain of tomorrow, uncertain of many things, and entirely safe regardless. There is nothing false you need to hold up between yourself and this moment. No polished answer required, no fine phrase necessary. Only this, only you, as you actually are, in the dark, breathing. If a small voice in you still insists that you ought to know more, or to have more figured out by now, let it speak, and then let it go. The way the wind at last let go of the shutters, and quiet came into the room. You are not required to arrive at this rest by way of understanding. You were only ever required to arrive by way of honesty. And you are already, this very moment, entirely honest. You do not know how tomorrow will unfold. Almost no one ever has. And here you are anyway, held, breathing, close to yourself in exactly the way the old teachers meant. The fire is low now, only a soft orange glow among the coals, and the room has grown warm and still around it. The snow outside has stopped, and the whole mountain lies hushed and white beneath a sky going slowly dark, the last light fading gently behind the far peaks. Rest here a while, in this quiet nearness. There is nowhere else you need to walk tonight. There is nothing else you need to find. You have already arrived at the one thing the whole long road was ever actually leading toward, and it was never a place at all. It was only this: being here, unfinished, unsure, and entirely at peace. The fire in that small mountain room burns down slowly to embers, and Fian sleeps at last, close to himself in a way he had never quite managed before. But there is a danger waiting just past this kind of peace, a door that looks like freedom and is not, and the old teachers were careful to warn against it. Tonight, we go to see what that danger looks like when a person walks through the wrong door by mistake. First, a hermitage on a quiet hillside. and a monk who believed he had let go of everything, and had in fact only gone cold. And then, an ordinary kitchen, years later, and half a world away, where a mother shows her daughter what real releasing actually feels like. You may have felt the pull of this mistake yourself, especially tonight. After so much talk of setting things down, there is a comfort in imagining that if you could just stop needing so much, stop wanting so much, stop caring quite so hard about how things turn out, then nothing could touch you again. You picture a kind of calm remove, a version of yourself who watches the storms of life pass by without ever getting wet. And there is a seed of truth buried in that picture. But there is also a trap in it, one that has caught a great many sincere people over a great many centuries. The trap of mistaking coldness for peace, of building walls and calling them equanimity, of going numb and calling it wisdom. It can look, from a distance, exactly like the freedom we have been speaking of all night. Up close, it is something else entirely. The old teachers told a story about exactly this, sharp enough that it has been passed down for hundreds of years, precisely because it stings a little. There was an old woman, long ago, in the hill country of China, who had spent 20 years quietly supporting a monk who lived alone in a small hermitage on her land. She brought him rice. She brought him firewood in the winter. She believed, with her whole simple heart, that she was tending something precious, a man growing daily closer to true awakening, and she waited patiently, year after year, to see what that awakening might finally look like when it arrived. The hermitage sat at the edge of a bamboo grove, small and plain, a single room with a low door and a paper window that let in a soft grey light. In autumn, the bamboo leaves rattled, dry and papery in the wind, and in winter the whole grove stood silvered with frost by first light. Smoke rose most evenings from its little chimney, thin and steady, and the old woman would watch it from her own low window across the field and feel a kind of quiet pride, the way anyone feels who has spent long years tending something they cannot see the inside of. She never once asked him what he did in there, alone, hour after hour. She only trusted that the smoke rising each evening was proof enough of a fire still faithfully kept. After 20 years, she decided at last to test what her patience had grown. She sent a young girl from the village, someone quick and clear-eyed, with careful instructions. "Go to him," the old woman said. "Embrace him, as a woman might embrace a man, and ask him plainly what he feels in that moment. Come back and tell me his exact words." The girl went and did as she was told, and the monk, taken entirely by surprise, drew back from her at once, his face composed into something smooth and untroubled. "There is nothing here to feel," he said, his voice even and cool. "An old branch on a bare rock in the dead of winter. No warmth anywhere in it. Nothing stirs." The girl returned across the field and told the old woman exactly what he had said, word for word. And the old woman, hearing it, did not smile with pride the way the girl expected. Her face went hard, and something like grief moved across it. 20 years, she said. 20 years I fed that man, thinking I was feeding a growing peace. And what I fed instead was only a man learning to feel nothing at all, and calling it holy. The girl was confused. But is that not what the teachings ask for? To want nothing? To be moved by nothing? "No," the old woman said, and her voice was fierce now, though there were tears standing in her eyes. He did not have to answer her passion, but he could have met her warmth with some warmth of his own, some plain human kindness for a frightened girl asked to do a strange thing. Instead, he gave her a bare rock. 20 years, and all I grew in that little hut was a man who had learned to close every door in himself and mistaken the silence behind those doors for peace. She walked across the field herself that same evening, and she did not scold him, and she did not argue with him. She simply set the hermitage on fire with her own hand and stood and watched the small paper window go up in flame and the thin smoke thicken into something black and final, rising into the dusk. The monk stood outside in the cold, watching everything he had built his stillness upon burn to the ground. And for the first time in 20 years, something in his carefully composed face broke open. He wandered for a long while after that, without a hermitage, without the old woman's rice, and it was said that it took him many more years to understand what she had actually shown him. He had believed that peace meant closing the doors of the heart, one by one, until nothing from the outside could reach him and disturb his stillness anymore. But a heart with every door closed is not at peace. It is only sealed, and a life sealed against being moved is not a freed life. It is only a smaller one, a life shrunk down to fit inside its own defenses, mistaking the absence of feeling for the presence of wisdom. Stay a moment with the burning hermitage, the black smoke rising into the cold evening sky. What had that monk actually achieved? In 20 years of quiet discipline, he had learned to want nothing, and in wanting nothing, he had also learned to give nothing, to receive nothing, to let no one and nothing truly reach him at all. He had confused the absence of attachment with the absence of feeling, and they are not the same thing, though from the outside, for 20 long years, they can look identical. This is the very trap that this whole gentle night could set for you, if you are not careful with it. Do not let the peace of not knowing become an excuse to stop caring. Do not mistake the setting down of your grasping for the closing of your heart. There is a vast difference between a hand that is opened because it no longer needs to clutch, and a hand that has simply gone numb. To see the difference plainly, come with me now, down off that cold hillside, to a small warm kitchen, generations later, where a mother is teaching her daughter something the old woman in the story would surely have recognized. The daughter, whose name was Yumi, was leaving home for the first time, to study in a city far away, and on her last evening, she sat at the low table while her mother prepared their final meal together, the smell of ginger and simmering broth filling the small warm room. Yumi had been quiet all day, and her mother could see the tightness in her, the effort it was taking her not to cry. "I keep trying not to feel so sad about leaving," Yumi finally admitted, staring down at her hands. "I thought if I could just stop caring so much, it would not hurt so badly to go." Her mother set down the ladle and looked at her for a long moment. "Is that what you want?" she asked gently. "To stop caring about your home, about me?" "No," Yumi said quickly. "Never that. I only wanted it to hurt less." "Then do not try to want less," her mother said. "Try to hold it differently instead. There is a kind of letting go that closes a door, and there is a kind that opens a window while the door stays exactly where it is. You do not have to stop loving this house, or me, in order to walk out of it tomorrow. You can carry every bit of that love with you, wide open, the whole way to the city, and it will not weigh you down the way you fear. It is only the clutching that weighs a person down. The love itself is light. Yumi looked up. Then what do I let go of? Only the belief that you have to hold on tightly for the love to remain real, her mother said. Watch. And she reached across the low table and took her daughter's hand, not gripping it, only resting her palm lightly over it, warm and unhurried. Feel that. It is not gripping you, and it is not absent either. It is simply here, as long as it is here, entirely warm, entirely present, asking nothing of you in return. That is what I want you to carry with you tomorrow. Not a wall, a window left open, in a house you can always come home to. That night, Yumi wept, freely, in her mother's arms, and there was nothing cold in it at all, and nothing weak in it either. And the next morning, she left for the city with her whole heart open, still tender, still able to be moved, and somehow lighter for it rather than heavier, the way a person is lighter for finally putting down a stone they had mistaken for something they needed to carry. Set the two of them side by side now, the cold monk on his burned hillside and the warm mother in her small kitchen. Both had let go of something. Only one of them had actually found peace in the letting go. The monk had built a wall and called it freedom. The mother had left a window open and called it love. The difference between them was not how much they released. It was what remained after the releasing. In the monk, nothing remained at all. In the mother, everything remained, only unclenched, only free to move. This is the true shape of the letting go this whole night has been pointing toward. It was never meant to leave you hollow. It was never meant to close your doors. Setting down your need to know, your need to control, your need to explain. None of that requires you to stop loving, or caring, or feeling the full weight of your own tender heart. You can open your hand without emptying it. You can release your grip on the outcome without releasing your love for the person, or the place, or the life the outcome belongs to. The monk mistook the shutting of a door for the opening of a hand, and spent 20 quiet years proud of a stillness that was only ever a kind of hiding. The mother knew better, without ever having read a single sutra. She simply kept her window open, and let the weather of her own heart move through it, freely, in both directions, all her life. So let your heart stay warm tonight, even as your grip continues to loosen. Feel your chest, right where the breath moves through it, and notice that it is not asked to go cold in order to be at peace. It is only asked to be open. Let it be soft there, tender even, undefended. There is no wall required tonight, no bar rock, no careful distance, only warmth, resting exactly as it is, unclenched and unafraid. If some part of you has been quietly building walls, thinking that was the way to peace, let it feel, gently, that there was never any need for that. You can be moved and still be free. You can love fully and still let go fully. They were never opposed to one another, not for one single moment. Rest now in this open, unwalled warmth. There is a window left open in you tonight, and something is waiting to come to it slowly, gently, when you are ready. Some final understanding, still further up this quiet path. We will walk to it together, in a little while, with no hurry at all. The window stays open in that small, warm kitchen long after Yumi has gone, and the mother's love keeps moving through it, unclenched, unafraid, exactly as it was meant to. And now, if you are willing, we go a little further still, past even the warmth we found there, into something wider. Not a teaching tonight. Not quite. Something closer to a view. First, to a cartographer's workshop in an old trading city, where a map maker had to decide, again and again, what to do with the places he had never seen. And then, back to a monastery courtyard, for one of the strangest and most spacious answers a Zen master ever gave a very large question. You have felt this widening before, perhaps only in glimpses. A moment on a hillside, or by the sea, or simply lying very still in the dark, when the small, tight knot of your own worries suddenly seemed to loosen all on its own. Not because you solved anything, but because for a moment you felt how much room there actually is around you. Most of the time we live pressed close against our own concerns. Our attention narrowed down to the single thread of whatever we are trying to know or fix or finish. It is a natural way to live, and a necessary one, most hours of most days, but it is not the only way to live. And tonight, having set down so much already, you may be ready to feel what opens when the narrowing finally eases. The old teachers called this spaciousness, and they meant it almost literally. Not a metaphor so much as a plain description of what the mind actually feels like once it stops gripping. There was a map maker, long ago, in a great trading city, on an old caravan route, whose name has not come down to us, but whose maps did, carried in dusty rolls from one generation of merchants to the next, and whose particular habit, unusual for his time, still has something to teach. His workshop sat above a busy street, the shutters open to the noise and smell of the caravans below, camels and mules, and the calls of traders in a dozen languages rising up through the warm, dusty air. Inside, the walls were lined with rolled maps, and the great table at the center of the room held whichever map he was working on that season, weighted flat at its corners with smooth river stones. Ink and dried pigment stood ready in little clay pots, and the whole room smelled of linseed oil and old parchment, and the sharp mineral scent of the inks themselves. Merchants and travelers came to him constantly, describing the roads they had walked, the rivers they had crossed, the mountain passes and desert wells, and piece by piece, he drew the known world onto his great sheets of parchment, careful and precise, every trade route marked, every city named. It was slow work and honest work, and he took great pride in it. But there was a habit of his that troubled some of his customers and delighted others, and it was this: where the roads ran out, where no traveler he trusted had yet gone, he did not guess. He did not fill the space with imagined mountains or invented rivers, the way some of his rivals did, drawing bold, confident lines across territory no one had actually walked, simply because a map with no blank spaces looked more finished, more impressive, more complete. Instead, in those unknown regions, he left the parchment plain and open, and in a small, careful hand, he wrote only, "Here, the land is not yet known." One young trader, preparing for his very first long trek west, unrolled such a map in the workshop one afternoon and frowned at the wide, pale blankness that covered nearly a third of it, right in the direction he needed to go. "How am I to trust this map?" he said, "when so much of it is simply empty? Should you not fill it in with your best understanding, so that I have something to follow?" The old mapmaker set down his brush and looked at the young man kindly. "Tell me," he said, "which would serve you worse on the road? A blank space that honestly tells you, 'I do not know what lies here. Walk carefully.' Or a confident false mountain drawn in exactly where a real river actually runs, that leads you to build your whole crossing on a lie?" The young trader was quiet. "A map with no blank places on it," the old man continued, "is not a more complete map. It is a more dishonest one. The blank space is not a failure of my craft. It is the truest part of the whole page. It tells you plainly where your own eyes must now take over from mine." "But is it not frightening," the young trader asked, "to walk toward a blankness like that, with nothing marked to guide you?" "It would be far more frightening," the old mapmaker said, "to walk confidently toward a false certainty, and only discover it was false when you were already lost inside it. The blank space respects you. It tells you the truth of your situation and trusts you to meet it, awake, rather than lulling you to sleep with a comforting lie." The young trader took the map with him when he left the city, and it was said, years later, when he had grown old and become something of a mapmaker himself, that he had come to love the blank places on his own maps more than any of the careful lines he drew. He said that the lines only showed him where other people had already been. The blank spaces were the only part of any map that still belonged entirely to the future, wide open, unclaimed, and full of room enough for anything at all to happen there. Stay a moment with that great pale parchment, the ink lines running out at its edges into honest, open space. What the old mapmaker understood, and what most of his rivals never did, was that the unknown is not an emptiness to be feared or covered over. It is simply room. Room for the road to continue in a direction no one has drawn yet. Room for the traveler's own eyes and feet to do the work that no map, however careful, could ever do in advance. A map crowded with false certainty is actually a smaller thing than a map with honest blank spaces on it, because the false certainty has already decided, wrongly, what is there. The blank space alone stays wide enough to hold whatever is actually truly there, whenever the traveler finally arrives to see it for himself. You have your own blank spaces, the parts of your life not yet drawn in, not yet known, and you may have spent a great deal of tonight, and a great many nights before it, trying to fill them in early with your best guess, just to make the map of your own future look more complete, more manageable, less frightening to look at. But feel, now, what the mapmaker felt. The blank space is not a wound in the map. It is the map's only truly spacious part. Everything that has not yet happened to you is not a threat waiting in the dark. It is simply room, wide and open, for a life that has not yet had the chance to become drawn lines at all. Now, let us go one step further into that room, all the way to its widest point, to a monastery courtyard where a monk once tried to make even the whole of existence fit onto a single small map, and was answered in the strangest, most spacious way imaginable. There was a master named Zhao, one of the most quietly celebrated teachers of his age, known across the land for the plain, the unadorned way. He met even the largest questions his students could ask him. One day a monk came to him, having spent a great deal of study on a certain old teaching, and he asked it with the particular seriousness of someone who believed he had finally arrived at the very edge of understanding. "Master," the monk said, "it is said that the 10,000 things all return to the one. But I must ask you this. to what does the one itself return? It was about as large a question as a person can ask. Beneath it lay every human longing there has ever been for a final resting place. Some ultimate ground beneath all the ground. Some last answer beneath all the answers. The place where the seeking could finally stop. Zhao did not pause even a moment before answering. When I was in the region of Qingzhou, he said, I had a robe made. It was made of hemp. It weighed 7 pounds. The monk stood there, utterly still, waiting for the rest of the answer, for the part that would connect the great cosmic question to this strange small detail about an old robe. But there was no more to it. That was the whole of the answer. I do not understand, the monk finally said. I asked about the one, the source of all things, and you tell me about a hemp robe. Then wear it, Zhao said simply, and stop asking where it goes when you take it off. The monk left, and it is not recorded whether he understood that day or many years later, if he understood at all. But those who have carried the exchange forward across the centuries since have felt, again and again, the strange wide-open door that Zhao opened with his answer. The monk wanted a final destination, a last small point where everything could be gathered up and finished. Zhao gave him a robe instead, ordinary, weihablo, worn on an ordinary back in an ordinary place. And by doing so, he showed the monk something no metaphysical answer ever could have shown him. There was no smaller room waiting beyond the great room. There was only this robe, this weight, this present, unremarkable, entirely sufficient moment, already whole, already containing everything the question had been reaching for. Put the mapmaker and the old master side by side now, and something in each of them rhymes gently with the other. The mapmaker refused to draw false lines across what he had not yet seen, and left the unknown open, spacious, honest. Zhao refused to draw a false destination beneath the deepest question a mind can ask, and simply handed the monk his own ordinary robe instead. Spacious, honest, entirely enough. Neither one gave a smaller answer than the question deserved. They gave the only true answer such questions can ever really have. There is no far edge to arrive at. There is only more room, opening endlessly in every direction. And this very moment, plain and unremarkable and complete, always somehow large enough to hold it all. This is the widest view this whole night has to offer you. You are not a small, finished thing, pressed in against a frightening unknown. You are something far more spacious than that. Something that has room enough inside it for every blank space on your own map, for every question with no final answer, for the whole 10,000 things, and whatever it is they might return to. You do not have to shrink yourself down to fit your fears. You were always larger. That was always true. So let yourself grow wide and quiet now. Spacious, the way that old parchment was spacious. The way an ordinary hemp robe once was. Somehow, enough. Feel the whole of your body resting. And beyond your body, feel the whole of the dark room around you. And beyond the room, the wider dark of the night itself. Vast and unhurried, and holding everything within it, without the smallest effort. You are part of that same vastness. You do not have to hold yourself together tightly to remain real. You can let yourself spread out, soft and wide, into the room that has been here the entire time, waiting patiently for you to notice it. There is nothing you need to draw in tonight. Let the blank places on your own map stay open, unafraid, simply spacious, simply yours to walk into slowly, one honest step at a time, whenever their hour finally comes. And soon, when you are ready, we will come back down from this wide, high place to something smaller and more tender, a sealed letter carried for years, and a woman who finally learned what to do with it. We will go to her gently, in a little while, in no hurry at all. The mapmaker's blank spaces stay open on their old parchment, and the wide dark of the night keeps holding everything within it, unhurried, and you are still part of that same vastness, spread out and soft. But not every unknown a person carries is so large. Some of it fits in the palm of one hand. Tonight we come down from the wide, high place to something small and plain and years old. A sealed letter, carried from one drawer to another, from one house to another, for longer than its owner could easily say, never once opened. You may know a version of this small unknown yourself, not the great uncertainties of the whole future, but one particular thing, close and specific, that you have carried for a long time without looking at directly, a message you never finished reading, a drawer you have not opened, a conversation you have rehearsed beginning 100 times and never once actually begun. It is a small unknown compared to the size of a life. And yet it can sit in the chest with a weight all out of proportion to its size, because as long as it stays sealed, it can still be anything at all. The moment it opens, it becomes only one thing. And some part of us would rather carry an unopened anything than risk holding a known something that turns out to be the wrong one. The old teachers understood this too, in their quiet way. Though they rarely spoke of drawers and letters, they spoke instead of the strange comfort the mind takes in an unexamined fear, the way a shadow in a doorway can feel larger and more dangerous than whatever is actually standing there once the lamp is finally lifted. There was a woman, not so very long ago, in a small mountain village in Korea, who carried exactly such a letter for the better part of 11 years. And who finally, on one ordinary autumn evening, found the courage to lift the lamp. Her name was Sunok, and the letter had come from her younger brother, Jaemin, who had left the village as a young man to find work in the city, against her wishes and their mother's blessing both, and who had written to her only once in all the years since. This single letter, thick and heavy in its yellowed envelope, arriving one winter afternoon, long after she had stopped truly expecting to hear from him at all. She remembered exactly where she had been standing when it came, the cold air off the mountain still clinging to her coat, her breath a pale cloud in the failing light, the postman's own breath rising white as he handed it across, her own hands. She remembered, trembling slightly as she took it, the paper cold and unfamiliar against her fingers. And then she had not opened it. She told herself, that first evening, that she wanted to be alone and unhurried when she finally read her brother's words. And so she set it, still sealed, in the bottom drawer of her small wooden chest, beneath the folded winter quilts, meaning to return to it the following morning. But the following morning brought its own small tasks, and the day after that brought more, and somehow the letter simply stayed where she had set it. Through one season and then the next, and the not opening slowly hardened, without her quite choosing it, into a kind of habit she no longer examined. The chest itself sat in the corner of her small room for 11 years, plain dark wood, its brass fittings gone soft and dull with age, its surface worn smooth in places by decades of her own family's hands before her. Every so often, folding a quilt away for the season, her fingers would brush the edge of that yellowed envelope beneath the linens, and something in her chest would tighten, and she would close the drawer a little more quickly than she needed to, telling herself each time that tomorrow, or perhaps the week after, she would finally sit down and read it properly. It was her neighbor, an old woman named Grandmother Yun, who finally asked her about it directly. One evening in late autumn, when the two of them sat together, shelling beans by lamplight, the smell of wood smoke drifting in through the half-open door. "You still have not read it," Grandmother Yun said. It was not really a question. She had known Sunoke for many years, and had noticed, in her quiet way, the particular carefulness with which the younger woman always avoided that bottom drawer. Sunoke's hands went still over the beans. "How did you know?" "Because I watch you fold the quilts every autumn," the old woman said. "And every autumn your hands hesitate at the very same place in the drawer. 11 years now, I think. Tell me, child, what do you imagine is written there that keeps you from lifting the seal?" Sunoke was quiet for a long moment. "I do not know," she finally admitted. "That is exactly the trouble. As long as I do not open it, he could be writing to forgive me for the things I said to him before he left. Or he could be writing to tell me he never wants to see my face again. While it is sealed, it is still both of those things at once. The moment I open it, it will only be one of them. And I find I would rather carry the both of them together than lose one of them for certain." Grandmother Yun set down her bowl of beans and looked at her with an old, steady patience. 11 years is a very long time to carry 2 letters instead of 1, she said gently. "And I wonder, child, whether the unopened letter has not become heavier than either of the 2 you are afraid it might actually be." "What do you mean?" "I mean that an unopened fear grows in the dark," the old woman said. "It has no true shape of its own, so your mind is free to give it any shape it likes. And your mind, being frightened, will nearly always give it the worst shape it can imagine. A real letter, however hard, has an edge to it, a beginning and an end. You can read it and grieve if you must, and then, in time, you can set it down. But an imagined letter, carried sealed for 11 years, has no edge at all. It simply grows a little more. Every single season you leave it in the dark." Sunoke looked toward her own small house across the lane, toward the dark corner where the chest stood waiting, and something in her chest ached in a way she had not let herself feel in a very long time. "I am afraid," she said quietly, "that if it is the second kind of letter, I will not be able to bear it." "You have already been bearing it," Grandmother Yun said, not unkindly. "You have been bearing both letters every single day for 11 years. I do not think you have very much bearing left to prove to anyone. Go home tonight. Light the lamp. Whatever is written there, you will finally know its actual shape, instead of the shape your fear has been building in the dark all this time. And a known shape, however hard, can finally be set down. An imagined one, I think, cannot." Sunoke walked home slowly through the cool autumn air, the smell of wood smoke and fallen leaves thick around her, and she stood a long while in front of the small wooden chest before she finally knelt and opened the bottom drawer. The quilt came away easily. The envelope beneath them had gone soft and fragile with age. The ink on its front faded, but still legible. Her own name in her brother's careful hand. She sat on the floor with it for a long moment, feeling its true, ordinary weight in her palm for the first time in 11 years. And then, before she could talk herself out of it again, she broke the old seal and unfolded the single thin page inside. It was neither of the two letters she had feared. Jae-min had written, in his plain, unpracticed hand, mostly about his life in the city, the work he had found, a small room he had rented near the river, the sound of it below his window at night, and near the bottom of the page, almost as an afterthought, he had written that he thought of home more often than he had expected to, and that he hoped she was well, and that he did not blame her for the things said between them before he left, since he had said his own share of hard words that winter too. It was not forgiveness exactly, and it was not rejection either. It was only an ordinary letter from an ordinary brother, written in a moment of homesickness, 11 years gone, saying, in his own plain way, that the door between them had never actually been as closed as her silence had led her to believe. Sunoke wept, sitting on the floor of her small room with the old letter in her lap, not from grief, and not quite from relief either, but from something closer to release. The strange loosening that comes when a shape long imagined in the dark is finally seen in the light, and found to be smaller, and more human, and far more bearable than the shadow it had cast. Stay with her a moment longer. On the floor of that small, quiet room, the thin old page open in her lap. What she had carried for 11 years was never really the letter. It was the space where the letter's true shape should have been, filled instead with every fear her mind could invent to occupy it. And the moment she finally lifted the seal, she discovered what is nearly always true of such imagined shapes. They are almost never as simple, and almost never as final, as the plain human truth waiting quietly underneath them. You may have your own small sealed thing tonight, carried quietly for longer than you can easily say. It does not have to be a letter. It might be a conversation, or a question, or a simple truth about your own life that you have not yet let yourself look at directly. It might be smaller still, a single sentence you have never said aloud to someone you love, a fear about your own health you have not yet named even to yourself, an old hurt you have folded away beneath the ordinary business of your days, the way Sunoke folded her quilts over that yellowed envelope, year after year, without ever quite deciding to. And you may have been telling yourself, as Sunoke did, that the not knowing is somehow safer than whatever the knowing might turn out to be. But the unopened fear only grows larger in the dark. It has no edge to hold it. Only the plain, ordinary truth, however hard it might be, has an edge, a shape, a place where it can finally end and be set down. You do not have to open every sealed thing tonight. That is not what this hour is for. But you can let yourself feel, gently, that whatever you are carrying sealed is very likely smaller, and more human, and more bearable than the shadow your own tired mind has built around it in the dark. You do not have to fear the shape of it any longer than you truly need to. So let your hands rest now, open and empty, the way Sunoke's hands finally rested once the old page lay open in her lap. The 11 years of carrying finally, quietly, set down. Feel the weight of your own arms, resting heavy and unhurried at your sides, and the weight of your own hands, still and open, holding nothing. There is nothing sealed you must open tonight. There is only this permission, offered quietly, that whatever you are carrying does not have to stay a shadow forever. It can wait, gently, for its own true hour. And when that hour comes, you will likely find, as Suno-K did, that it was never quite as large as the dark had made it seem. The lamp is low now, the smell of wood smoke drifting soft through the small room, and somewhere outside, a single leaf is letting go of its branch, turning slowly through the cool evening air, unhurried, and settling, without a sound, into the grass below, exactly where it was always going to land. The lamp in Suno-K's small room burns low, and somewhere far off, the last leaf of that story has already settled into the grass, and the night around you has grown very quiet now, very soft. There is only a little further to walk tonight, and the path ahead has grown gentle, unhurried, almost without shape at all. Let us go there now, up onto the mountain itself, where the mist has been waiting for us since the very first words of this long, slow night. You do not need much guidance for this part. You have already walked so far tonight, through fishing villages and monasteries, through mountain halls and small, warm kitchens, through wooden chests and sealed letters, and something in you has grown quieter with each step, less in need of an ending, more able simply to be here. So let this last story ask very little of you. Only your breath, only the soft weight of your own body, resting. There is nothing left to figure out. There is only this, the last soft stretch of path, and the dark, unhurried air. There was, long ago, in the hill country, where so many of tonight's small lives were lived, a traveler making her way home along a mountain path at dusk. The same path, perhaps, that has been rising quietly beneath this whole night's telling, gathering mist and story alike into its long, slow climb. Her name does not matter very much, and so we will let it rest unspoken, the way so many good and quiet lives rest unspoken in the world, unrecorded, and no less complete for it. She had walked this road her whole life, since she was a small child, following behind her own mother, and she knew, without needing to think of it, every rise and every hollow of it, the way a person knows the sound of their own front door closing, without ever once having studied it on purpose. She had begun her walk that morning in clear light. The valley spread out golden and precise below her, every farmhouse and terraced field visible, all the way to the far blue hills, the rooftops catching the early sun, the rice paddies laid out in their long, bright mirrors, a hawk, turning once, high and lazy, above the ridge. She had walked with an easy, confident stride, able to see, from any high point on the trail, almost the whole of where she was going. And there was a certain pleasure in that, the pleasure of a road entirely laid open before her eyes. But as the day wore on, the sky had softened, first at its edges, then more completely, the blue going slowly to a pale, uncertain grey, and by late afternoon, a fine mist had begun to gather in the low places, thin as breath at first, then thicker, rising slowly up the mountainside as the light faded, until by dusk it had swallowed the whole valley entirely. And then the lower slopes, and then, at last, the path itself, just a few steps ahead of her feet. She stopped for a moment, where the mist first closed around her, and felt the old, familiar tightening that comes when the eyes can no longer do the work they are used to doing. She could not see the farmhouse she was walking toward. She could not see the next bend in the trail, nor the drop at its edge, nor anything at all beyond the nearest few stones, wet and dark and softly gleaming in what little light remained. The world she had walked so easily through that morning had simply closed its hand around her, gently but completely, and for a moment, the not seeing felt like a kind of danger, the way it always had, the old instinct to stop, to wait, to demand of the fog that it show her more than it was willing to give. But she had walked this path many times before, in every season, in sun and rain and snow, and something in her, some old and patient part of her, remembered what the mist had never once failed to do. It always thinned, eventually, just enough, not all at once, and not very far ahead, but enough, always enough for the next step. And then, once that step was taken, enough for the one after it. So she walked on, slowly, feeling the path more than seeing it, the give of soft earth beneath one foot, the solid press of stone beneath the other, the cool, damp air moving gently against her face, carrying the smell of wet pine and turned soil, and, faintly, far below, wood smoke from some hearth she could not see. For the first stretch of that blind walking, some part of her still strained forward, the way eyes will strain even in a darkened room, searching for a shape that is not there to be found. She caught herself, more than once, stopping to peer hard into the grey, as though enough looking might finally part it. It was near the halfway point of the climb that she came upon an old herder sitting on a low stone wall at the trail's edge, waiting, it seemed, for his goats to find their own way up through the mist behind him, their small bells sounding faint and scattered somewhere in the grey below. "You are out late, to be walking blind like this," he said, not unkindly, as she drew near enough to see his shape. "I cannot see the path at all beyond the next few stones," she admitted. "I keep wanting to stop until it clears." The old herder considered this, scratching absently at the grey stubble on his chin. "It will not clear tonight," he said. "Not up here. It never does, once it has come down this heavy. But tell me, can you see the stone beneath your own foot? Right now, this moment?" She looked down. "Yes." "Then you have exactly enough sight for exactly this step," he said, and stood, and whistled softly for his goats. "Worry about the next stone when your foot is actually reaching for it, and not one moment before. The mist has never yet failed to show a person that much, however heavy it falls." He moved off into the grey with his small unseen flock, his voice trailing back once, warm and unhurried. "Walk well," he said, and then he too was gone, swallowed gently into the same soft white that had swallowed everything else that evening. She did not try to see the farmhouse anymore. She did not try to see the bend, or the drop, or the whole shape of the mountain around her. She only felt for the next stone, and set her foot upon it, and felt for the one after that. And somewhere in the middle of that slow, blind, faithful walking, she noticed that the old tightness in her chest had gone very quiet. It was not that the mist had thinned. Exactly, though here and there it did, in soft, shifting patches that showed her, briefly, a dark shape of pine, a pale gleam of standing water in a field, and then closed again just as gently as it had opened. It was something else. She had simply stopped needing the mist to be otherwise. She walked inside it now, the way a fish moves inside water, without struggle, without the old demand to see beyond what could actually be seen. The mist was not against her. It had never been against her. It was only the ordinary breath of the mountain, settling for the night, exactly as her own breath was settling in her chest. Somewhere along that quiet walking, she began to notice small things she might otherwise have hurried past. The particular sound her own footsteps made on wet stone, soft and certain. A single late cricket, somewhere off in the grass, singing on into the damp evening as though the mist meant nothing to it at all. The way her own breath came and went, unhurried, matched almost without her noticing to the slow rhythm of her walking. A faint warmth still held in the stones beneath her feet, the last of the day's sun, giving itself back slowly into the cooling air. She was not thinking any longer about the farmhouse ahead, or the distance still to cover, or whether the fog would lift before full dark came down. She was only here, on this one wet stone, and then the next, feeling her way gently through a world that had never once asked her to see the whole of it at once. And the strange thing, the thing she would remember afterward more than anything else about that walk, was how little she minded. The mist that had once felt like a kind of danger had become, somewhere in that slow procession of stones, simply the shape of the evening itself, no more frightening than dusk, no more frightening than sleep. The lights of the farmhouse, when they finally came, arrived so gradually that she could not afterward have said the exact moment she first saw them. A soft gold smudge in the grey, growing slowly warmer and more solid with every few steps, until at last the shape of the door resolved itself, and the smell of wood smoke grew rich and near, and she was simply, quietly, home, the mist still soft around her shoulders, the whole mountain behind her, settling into a night she had walked through without ever once needing to see its end. Inside, someone had already banked the fire low for the evening, and the small room held its warmth the way a cupped hand holds water, gently, without spilling any of it. Stay with her a moment longer. On that last stretch of path, the farmhouse lights still soft and far ahead, her own breath still slow and even in the cool night air. She had never needed the whole mountain laid bare before her. She had only ever needed the next stone, and the patience to feel for it, and the trust, quiet and unproven and entirely sufficient, that the mist would keep thinning, gently, exactly as far as she needed it to, exactly when she needed it to, and not one moment before. This had been true of every mountain she had ever walked, in every season of her life, though she had not always remembered it. And some winters she had forgotten it entirely, and found her way home anyway. It was true tonight. It would be true again tomorrow, and the night after that, and every night the mist ever came down to meet her. This is very near the heart of everything this whole night has been walking toward, and we have almost, gently, arrived. You were never asked to see the whole road. No one ever is. Not the sky reader on her cold stone step, not the young monk in his cold cell, not the mother with her open window, not the woman with her sealed letter. Not you, resting here now. You were only ever asked to feel for the next stone, and to trust, quietly, that the mist would go on thinning exactly as far as your next step required, and no further, because no further was ever truly needed. Think of how much of this night you have already walked exactly that way, one stone at a time, without ever once needing the whole path laid bare before you. You did not need to know how each story would end before you were willing to enter it. You simply walked in, a little further each time, and the next part of the path was always, somehow, there to receive your foot when you needed it. That has been true of every story tonight. It has been true, if you look closely, of a great many nights in your own life as well, long before this one. So let the mist be soft around you now, exactly as it is. Feel your own breath moving, unhurried, matched to nothing in particular, needing to see nothing ahead of it in order to keep on coming, gently, one small breath after another. Feel the weight of your whole body, settled now, the way the traveler's body settled into her own slow walking, no longer bracing against what could not be seen. Feel your feet, wherever they rest, heavy and still, done with their walking for tonight. The way her feet at last came to rest on the warm wooden floor of that small farmhouse. The door closed softly behind her against the mist. Feel your shoulders, your hands, your whole quiet weight, gathered here, needing nothing further from the dark around you. There is nothing further you need to see tonight. There is only this next breath, and the soft dark around it, and the quiet knowing, somewhere beneath all your thinking, that the path has always, somehow, continued to hold you, one step at a time, all the way home. You do not have to see the farmhouse to know it is there. You do not have to see the morning to know it will come. You only have to feel for this one next breath, soft and near, and let it carry you the small remaining distance into sleep. The mist is still on the mountain. It will still be there in the morning, thinning slowly with the light, the way it always has, the way it always will. You do not have to wait for it to clear. You were already home, in this softness, the entire time. Somewhere above you, unseen, the stars are doing exactly what they have always done, whether the mist allows you to see them tonight or not, and that has never once depended on your watching. The farmhouse door has closed now, softly, against the mist, and somewhere inside it a fire is banked low for the night, and the traveler we walked beside is already asleep, or nearly so, her whole body given over at last to the stillness of the room around her. The goats have found their own way home too, somewhere lower on the mountain, their small bells gone quiet now in some warm stone shelter. The old herder who met her partway up the trail has long since reached his own door as well, and is warming his hands, perhaps by his own small fire, having asked nothing more of the mist than it was ever willing to give. We do not need to follow her any further than this. We only need to rest here, a little longer, in the same soft dark she has already found. There is nothing more to understand tonight. There is only this last quiet stretch, and your own breath, and the slow settling of a body that has walked, in its own way, the whole of this long night's road, through fishing villages and mountain monasteries, through kitchens and snowstorms and small wooden chests. You have come a long way to arrive at this plain, unremarkable rest. It did not require you to master anything. It only required you to keep walking, gently, through everything you could not see, and to trust, again and again, that the next small step would be enough. That has always been enough. It is enough now. Somewhere in the last soft edge of waking, a few words may drift back to you, unbidden, the way a familiar voice sometimes returns in the moment just before sleep. Not knowing is most intimate. You do not have to hold on to them. You do not have to turn them over, or understand them further, or do anything at all with them except let them pass through you. Once, gently, like a hand resting for a moment on your shoulder and then lifting away. The sky reader's fog is still moving somewhere, out over her quiet sea, and she is sleeping now too, her hands finally still, the cold stone step long since left behind for a warm bed. The young monk's question is still lying down beside him like an old dog by the fire, and he does not need to answer it tonight, or any night. The man who hung so long from his own branch has let it go, and found the good ground exactly where it always was, an inch beneath his feet. The mother whose son came home is holding his rough, warm hand in the lamplight, and the answer she once needed so badly has grown small and quiet and unimportant beside the simple fact of him, alive. Beside her, the midwife's hands are open still, empty and ready, and the young student beside her has learned, at last, what an open hand can do that a closed one never could. The monk who feared a coming winter is sitting in his good autumn evening, watching one more leaf fall, unhurried, in no rush at all to meet a season that has not yet arrived. The mother's window is still open, and the warm air still moves through it, freely, in both directions. The mapmaker's blank places are still wide and honest and unafraid, waiting patiently for whoever walks that way next. The letter is read. The old ache it carried has been set down. The mist on the high mountain is thinning, slowly, exactly as far as it needs to, and not one step further than that. All of it is still out there, softly, in the dark, going on quietly without you, and none of it needs you to hold it any longer tonight. You do not have to remember any of it precisely. You do not have to carry the names, or the places, or the careful shape of any single story. Let them all soften now, the way distant lights soften through a window fogged with sleep, blurring gently into one another. One long, warm glow instead of many separate flames. What mattered in each of them was never the details. It was only this: a person, afraid of not knowing, who set the fear down, gently, and found that the ground was still there. You do not have to remember which one was the fisherwoman and which one was the mother, which one carried a bowl and which one carried a robe, which mountain held which story, which country, which century. Let it all become one soft country now, one long, unhurried night made of many small nights, each one ending the same simple way: a hand opening, a breath released, a question laid down beside the fire to sleep. You walked through all of them tonight, gently, one at a time, and you do not have to hold on to a single one of them now in order to keep whatever they gave you. It is already yours. It was always yours, long before tonight, waiting quietly for you to remember it in your own body rather than in your thinking mind. Feel your own body now, heavier than it has been all night, sinking gently into whatever is holding you. Begin, if you like, at the very top, the small muscles around your eyes, softening, letting go of whatever they have been holding since morning. Feel your forehead smooth and easy, unlined, asking nothing. Feel your jaw, unclenched, the tongue resting soft behind closed teeth. Feel your neck and the back of your head heavy against whatever it rests upon. Feel your shoulders, low and loose, dropping a little further with each breath, releasing whatever weight they have carried through the day. Feel your arms, heavy from shoulder to fingertip, resting, done with their reaching. Feel your hands, open, empty, asking nothing. Feel your chest, soft, rising and falling on its own, and your belly beneath it, gently moving with each slow breath. Feel your hips, heavy, and your legs, long and unhurried, sinking a little further into rest with every breath that passes. Feel your feet, wherever they rest, heavy and still, done with their walking for tonight. The way the traveler's own feet came at last to rest on the warm wooden floor of her small farmhouse. Let the whole of you, from the crown of your head to the soles of your feet, grow heavier now, softer now. One slow, unhurried wave of rest moving through you, needing nothing, asking nothing, simply arriving, the way the mist arrived on the mountain, the way sleep arrives on any ordinary night, gently and without announcement. Feel your breath, slower now, asking nothing of you, needing nothing from you, simply continuing on its own, the way it has continued every night of your life without your ever once having to manage it. In and out, unhurried, unwatched, complete, each time, entirely on its own. You do not know what tomorrow holds. You have not known all this long night through, and it has not once kept you from arriving, softly, here, at this quiet edge of sleep. You do not have to know now either. You only have to let this breath go, and the next one arrive on its own, and the next, and the next, further and further apart, softer and softer, until there is no more need to count them at all. There is no answer waiting for you tomorrow that you must reach for tonight. There is no question left unfinished that requires you, this very moment, to finish it. Whatever you do not know can wait, patiently, exactly where it is, the way the mist waits on the mountain, the way the blank places wait on the old map, unafraid, unhurried, entirely at ease with its own not yet. You spent so much of your life believing you had to hold the whole road in your hands before you were allowed to rest. Tonight, you have walked a long way without ever once seeing the whole road. And here you are anyway, safe, unhurried, close to the edge of sleep. That is not a small thing. That is, in its own quiet way, everything this whole night was trying to show you. The road was never the point. The next stone was always enough. It still is. The mist is not a wall tonight. It never was. It is only the shape the world takes when it, too, is finally resting, letting go of its own sharp edges, its own hard certainties, settling into something wide and grey and kind. You can rest inside it now, the way the whole mountain is resting inside it, unseen and unafraid and entirely held. You do not have to see the shape of tomorrow to trust that it is there, the way the farmhouse was always there. Waiting quietly at the far end of an evening, the traveler could not see the whole of. There is nowhere left to walk tonight. There is nothing left to find. There is only this soft, dark, and your own slow breath, and the whole quiet weight of you, sinking, gently, into whatever has been holding you the entire time. Let the body grow heavier. Let the breath grow slower. Let the last small thoughts of the day drift past like leaves on slow water, not needing to be caught, not needing to be followed, simply passing and passing and passing out towards some dark, gentle sea you do not have to see the far shore of. Whatever tomorrow is, it does not need you awake to prepare for it. It will arrive in its own time, in its own shape, and you will meet it then, the way the sky reader met her fog, the way the traveler met her mist, one small, honest step at a time. Tonight there is nothing to meet. There is only this breath, this weight, this soft, wide, unhurried dark, holding you exactly as it has held you the whole night through, and will go on holding you, gently, all the way to morning. The room around you is quiet now, and so is the room around every other person who walked with you through these small hours, near and far, each of them settling too, in their own beds, in their own dark, carrying their own small unknowns gently down into sleep. You are not alone in this. You were never alone in this. Not for one single moment of this long, slow night. Every person who has ever lain awake not knowing has, in their own night, found their own way down into exactly this same soft rest. And so will you, now, slowly, without needing to notice the exact moment it happens. Let the last of your thinking grow slow and thin, like the last of the mist finally beginning to lift from a valley floor, not vanishing all at once, only thinning, breath by breath, thought by thought, until there is mostly only quiet left, and beneath the quiet, only breath, and beneath the breath, only rest. Rest now, in the not knowing, exactly as it is. Rest, without needing tomorrow to be certain. Rest, held, unhurried, close to yourself. Rest, the way the whole mountain rests beneath its quiet cover of mist, unseen, unhurried, and entirely at peace. Rest. The mist is still on the mountain, the way it was in the very first words of tonight, soft and grey, and holding everything gently within it. But something in it has changed since we first stood at the foot of that path together. It is no longer a wall keeping you from seeing. It is only the shape the world takes when it, too, has finally set down the need to be seen all at once. Tonight, you walked beside a woman who could not read the sky, and a monk who could not answer a question, and a mother who waited 10 years for words that turned out to be almost nothing at all. You knelt in a birthing room, and stood beneath a burning hermitage, and sat by a small fire, while snow buried a mountain outside, and heard 4 words that were never meant to be understood, only felt. You opened a sealed letter after 11 years, and walked the last stretch of a misty road on feet that trusted the next stone before they could see it. None of them ever saw the whole path, not one, and every single one of them arrived home anyway, carried there the same way you are being carried now, one small, honest breath at a time. I want to say one true thing before we part for the night. I still do not know how many of my own uncertain roads will turn out. I expect I never fully will. But writing these words tonight, I found myself trusting the mist a little more than I did before. And I hope, somewhere in this long, slow telling, you found a little of that same trust settling into you too. You do not have to know how tomorrow unfolds in order to rest tonight. You never did. Rest is not the reward waiting on the far side of certainty. It was always available here. Now, in the soft grey middle of not knowing, exactly where you are. Sleep well tonight, in the not knowing. Let it be close to you. The way was close to all of them. Let it be intimate rather than frightening, familiar rather than foreign, a companion rather than an enemy at the door. If you found something here tonight, some small ease you would like to return to, you are always welcome back on this path. It will still be here, patient and unhurried, whenever you need it. Wherever you are, whatever remains unanswered in your life tonight, may you be held gently through the dark. May the mist be kind to you. May you wake. When you wake into a morning you do not need to have already understood. Rest now. The path will still be here. The mist will still be soft. And you, at last, can simply not know and sleep